invasion. The fact is, it doesn't really matter what it is. The big question, I would argue, is where on earth we put some of these people. And joining me now is Madeleine Sumption, who's director of the Migration Observatory. Madeleine, thank you very much. Please clear this up for me, because from where I'm sitting, and I speak to people all the time about this issue, the lower end of private rental stock is being gobbled up by the Home Office, social housing gobbled up by the Home Office, hotels gobbled up by the Home Office. Where do we put these people?
So there's been a lot of focus on hotels, and rightly so, because hotels are quite expensive and aren't always the appropriate accommodation for some of these people anyway. I think the key problem that we have, hotels have always been a contingency that was used when, in periods of peak demand, and for the most part, people lived in relatively low quality private accommodation. Now, the core problem behind all of the pressure that we're seeing at the moment, you have these short-term issues when a large number of people arrive on a particular day, but the real problem in the background of all of this is that we have a really big backlog of asylum applications that haven't been processed.
That up for me. Sorry, just talk me through that, because I'm keen to drill down on that, because unfortunately the issue is not when sporadically these people arrive in large numbers. They're now arriving in large numbers every single day. OK, so that is now just the issue. It's not an occasional problem. And what I don't understand, Madeleine, is if we sped up the asylum acceptance process, we currently accept something like 78% of them anyway, which is much higher than, say, Spain, which apparently only accepts 11.9%. It still is the question of where on earth we put these people.
Well, so part of the particular issue that the Home Office faces now is that while people are waiting for their application, they're not allowed to work, and so they would otherwise be destitute, and they have to be put in some kind of accommodation. Now, if you made those decisions faster and didn't have such a large backlog of people, over 100,000 applications at the moment, 100,000 people, people would then be able to go. They would either be rejected and liable for removal, or they would be accepted and have status in the UK, and then they would go and find accommodation in the way that other members of the population do. So it would.
Is it not difficult at the moment, because we're now facing an increasing number of Albanian, largely men, who are coming over? Reports suggest that 2% of the male population of Albania is already here. We are hearing increasing reports of them coming here with the express intention of entering the criminal underworld. We know for a fact that a lot of these people, whether or not they're Albanian or otherwise, are ditching documents in the channel and making it very difficult for us to tell who they are, even what age they are. So isn't it reasonable to expect that there's a backlog? Because I wouldn't want to live in a country where we rushed these things through. Do we not, rather unfortunately, now have to start from a standpoint of assuming that some of these people might be on the take, as opposed to assuming that they are actually genuine refugees or asylum seekers?
Yeah, on the time it takes, I think there's a tricky balance here, because, as you say, you don't want to rush it through and sort of make a decision overnight. These are really complicated cases. At the same time, so you can't necessarily make a decision in a few days. That said, many of the applications now are taking a year, sometimes 2 years, even 3 years, which isn't really good for anyone. In terms of the question about whether people should be assumed to have claims for, genuine claims for asylum or not. What's interesting, I think, is that over the last few years, we've actually seen a majority of all asylum claims being, a majority of all decisions on asylum applications have been positive. So the Home Office is determining that these are people who are in need of protection. Now, we don't know specifically for these cohorts of people who've been moving over the last few weeks, whether that will be the case for them, but certainly based on the stats in the past, it does look like many of the people, particularly those from Iran or from Syria. Or
can I ask on that?
Will get protection.
Just quickly on that, and you might be uniquely placed to answer this for me. A lot of people are concerned that that's because maybe people at the Home Office are overworked and they might be waving some of them through. Not sure about that, but that's just a concern that people have. But people also have a concern that at the moment, if I was an Albanian warlord, I could maybe get in a dinghy, come over here, say that I was gay and was going to be persecuted in my own country, leaving behind a wife and kids, and there's very little that people can do about that, and I get accepted. Is there massive loopholes in the law here, which mean that we are having to accept people And so these figures can be manipulated, or we judge that 80-odd% of them or whatever are genuine asylum seekers and refugees, but the reasons behind that might not be genuine themselves.
There are exceptions in refugee law for people who have serious criminal backgrounds. So the UK wouldn't necessarily be obliged to accept people with those problematic pasts. But I think for the most part, these are sort of people. I think it's around 16% in the most recent year of data of asylum seekers were from Albania. We actually, we have people coming from large numbers of different countries across the world, and all of the circumstances they face will be different.
Yeah, well, just my concern is that if you just say you're gay or from a particularly persecuted group, it may or may not be true. I mean, how do you prove if someone's gay? I mean, you can't really do that, can you?
Asylum applications are challenging, and I think over the last few years there has been an improvement in the information that Home Office decision makers have available to them, so that they can try and make the best decision that's available. But yes, it is a challenge.